All right. Good evening, ladies and gents. So we're going to take a short break from our usual liberty-oriented content, and I'm joined by Nick and the great Ace Archist. He's the co-host of the Slurp Gang podcast and also the champion of Twitter debates. And it's rumored he does not sleep. So we're gonna give you a little Star Wars power hour. So we hope you're ready to nerd out. So Ace, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. I'm so glad I'm going to be able to rant about something other than anarchism or something, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah,
I was like, it's our first live stream and I have like this weird feeling of nerves. But in reality, like Star Wars is my wheelhouse. It's like my earliest memories.
Right.
And I've been obsessed with economics and politics for like 5 to 10 years. I mean, really down the rabbit hole for 5 years, but Star Wars, that's like going back to age 4. So
Right.
maybe we'll start there. So Ace, what was your like first exposure to Star Wars? Or were you like me where you watched like the OT when you were like a toddler?
Yeah, I watched the OT when I was very young. I have the VHS box set somewhere, like the old VHSs somewhere around here. I don't know where they are, but yeah, I watched the OT and I watched the prequels. I don't know which one I watched first because back then it's all sort of a blur, you know? It's like Star Wars was just like always there, so I now don't have an entry point really to speak of.
Dude, that's like usually one of the first things I tell to like older fans or younger fans or people that got into Star Wars later. I feel robbed because it's like I've always known that Vader was Luke's dad. Like I always knew it. I don't remember like the big reveal. It's kind of bullshit, that my parents let me watch it before I was like 10. But yeah, no. So you guys, you said you're 25, Tyler's 30, I'm 27. Yeah. So we all kind of grew up like with the prequels as there's nostalgia there. We're not haters like the boomers.
No, I'm a big prequel respecter.
After I watched the Clone Wars, especially, I had to immediately go back and rewatch the prequels, and I appreciated them so much more.
Oh yeah, no, I had the exact same experience, because Clone Wars really recontextualizes the prequels into more of a cohesive unit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whereas if you just watch the prequels, I can understand where people are like, well, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. But when you go back and you watch Clone Wars, which if someone watching right now has not watched, it's on Disney Plus. The entire series is there. It's great. I definitely recommend it. Once you watch Clone Wars, the whole entire prequel series gets recontextualized and you can appreciate it so much more.
Yeah, and Jar Jar is very limited. So if that's your gripe, then then you're good, But I mean, Clone Wars, there's always like this stigma where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to watch a fucking kids show. But then you watch it and it's like when you can get past that and swallow your pride. I mean, we're already Star Wars fans, so you kind of have to do that. So, but then it's like, yeah, you can enjoy it. Like it does add so much context, like General Grievous and that kind of shit. And then just like the lore of the universe in general.
That's right, yeah. And I always think that's kind of funny too, because it's like we all started watching Star Wars when we were kids, so it's always kind of funny when, people say, oh yeah, I don't want to watch Clone Wars because it's a kid's show, but ultimately we got into Star Wars as a kid's adventure type thing, you know what I mean? In some way.
Yeah. And it's like they know that. Like they know that they can ride that nostalgia.
That's right.
And I mean, like I just finished yesterday watching Rebels, which was fun. I mean, it was like the same kind of, and you could say the same thing about The Mandalorian, where it's sort of like a little bit predictable. Like, nobody's going to get killed by a stormtrooper. That there's going to be side quests so they can get the next MacGuffin, but it's still fun nonetheless.
Yeah.
And maybe we should preface this. If you haven't watched any of these, but you intend on it, you might want to turn this off now because we're going to throw some spoilers out.
Oh, yes. I was actually going to bring that up because if it's okay, I do intend to like spoil things as we're talking about them. So good warning. Good warning.
Yeah, I figured we would get that out of the way. And also shout out to Small Crimes for putting the mega threat out there and making this happen.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, she put the mega threat out there, and this all came to fruition out of that. But anyways, back to Star Wars.
Yeah, so I figured that we could start with, I feel like the plot of the prequel trilogy is so underrated. Like it is truly, it's like George Lucas kind of captured the story of every republic turned empire. Like it's Rome, it's the US, it's all of these things, and people, shit on the prequels, like all the boomers and everything, and they don't respect like how good that backstory is. Like they just get hung up on, Lucas's terrible dialogue where I actually heard a story. I forgot who, I think it was maybe like that Star Wars theory guy on YouTube saying that basically by the time the prequels were made, everybody was so afraid of George Lucas that nobody told him, like nobody gave him any critical feedback. They're just like, I like sand or I hate sand. Yep. That sounds good. Good dialogue. So that's why the cringe is in there.
Yeah, I hopping off of that, I think the prequel, the story underneath the prequels is actually fantastic. I think it's great. I think the execution is a little sloppy. I think that's a very fair criticism. But the actual story underneath it, with like the political intrigue and just the story of the Jedi themselves, right? Because I feel like one of the things when people watch the prequels and they're so like disappointed is that I feel like sometimes they watch them thinking the Jedi are going to be like these heroic players. They're going to be like these real heroes. But when you watch the prequels, you're kind of expected to watch them from the viewpoint of that, no, this is the Jedi when they're failing, right? This is their greatest moment of failure here. And it's like, you're not necessarily supposed to look at them as heroes necessarily, or the good guys traditionally.
Yeah, they're
Right.
sort of like they show off their arrogance, like they were blind because they were so proud and engaging in politics.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
And also like the Clone Wars does a really good job of kind of tying that all together too.
Oh, yeah.
Like where Yoda has that moment where he talks to Qui-Gon and then he realizes like all this was fucked.
Yeah,
Like,
it was.
no one wins in war.
Yeah, they were doomed to fail from the start as soon as they started playing the game. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, out of all the prequel characters, really the only like from the start, really the only like really like heroic and good character, like in the sense that you would view as a hero, is Qui-Gon, in my view, like from the prequels, right? And everyone there, like even Obi-Wan, who is a good hero and a character, he's still kind of blinded in the same way that the rest of the Jedi are blinded by everything.
Yeah, Obi-Wan is just kind of like naive, but he's still like, his allegiance is to the Republic and everything. But Qui-Gon was based from episode 1, all the way just to the end of episode 1 because they killed him off. But Qui-Gon, he had it down. And the other thing about the prequels is it details, like in the original trilogy, they just make Sidious or the Emperor just this kind of like mysterious guy, and you wonder what his backstory is. And then the prequels made Palpatine like the archetypal bad guy, and he's compelling because his whole grand vision, it's like the same reason Thanos was a good bad guy, because they get into like his psychology. Like Palpatine, he wanted order and control. He was like this neoliberal sort of just dictator.
He kind of reminds me of FDR.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
nobody
with
asks
working legs.
I want to know what Palpatine's actual policies were. What if he was like a really good minarchist? Like he was just like low taxes, but then just like the rebels like just hated one thing. Like he was, he had, prohibition on one substance. And so basically he was like the Calvin Coolidge of the Star Wars universe. And they had to fucking overthrow the guy.
That's true. The rebels were Marxists.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It was a Marxist revolution.
Yeah. The Empire did nothing wrong. Yeah.
But that's what's interesting, is because like, Jordan Peterson talks about the like Jungian archetypes and why people watch fiction, because it kind of like speaks to your subconscious and all of these like deep things within you. And what's hilarious to me is people like, if you went through all the like blue check marks or blue anon, like all these people that were like COVID crazy, and you ask them about Star Wars, they'd be like, oh, I fucking love Star Wars. But it's like, in reality, they would have had the Empire's back. Like they would have been there. They, you know what I mean? The rebels would have been terrorists and domestic terrorists. So that is funny. So they're kind of missing that subconscious theme that, people talk about in fiction.
They're like that meme that was going around Twitter for a while. We're like, look how many jobs the Death Star is creating.
Oh, right.
It's a jobs program.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I guess going back to the like animated series, or not the animated series. The one thing I want to talk about was the Obi-Wan series. Like that's coming up, and I think that's going to be really good, because Disney, if they give control to Dave Filoni, then I have hope for the future, a new hope.
Yeah.
But
he recently got promoted to like executive producer at Lucasfilm.
Yes. They need to get Kathleen Kennedy and whatever her title is, and all those people. Get the fuck out of there. And then, just the whole Disney thing. Like they made it so corporate. And the fact that they like the disrespect that they had with the sequel trilogy where they admitted there was no plan, that's unforgivable. I mean, they should have like an episode 10 where it turns out that like the entire sequel trilogy was just like a Jar Jar Binks fever dream. Like it never happened. Just like wipe it, just like, make that canonically true that it never happened because it was just a dumpster fire.
Right. Like the worst thing, and I know this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I place more blame on, well, obviously, Kathleen Kennedy obviously deserves a lot of blame, but of the directors, I actually place more blame on JJ than I do Ryan, because I feel like he kind of set the whole thing off into that trajectory, and how he capped it off, I think was pretty bad to say the least.
Yeah, I think I share that feeling. Like there's plenty of blame to go around because I mean episode 7 they basically they just repackaged A New Hope like verbatim. They didn't they just like
better
copied the
special
homework.
effects.
Yeah, exactly. Better special effects and worse characters and backstories. But and then episode 8 they handed off to a different guy like it's a fucking relay race and he blows up the whole thing like, oh, I'm gonna kill your big bad guy. And then what's frustrating to me, nobody makes this criticism of The Last Jedi, but what frustrates me about it is it covers like no ground. Like it picks up immediately after episode 7 and the whole thing is like a 10-hour chase scene or like 2-day chase scene. Like
it takes place in like a day or two. Yes,
it covers no time and then they kill off the characters. They answer no questions. They leave you with more questions and then they hand it back to JJ where he now has to like basically fit a new trilogy into one movie and it shows it's that sloppy.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I think I was thinking about the most recent trilogy a couple days ago actually, and I really feel like The Rise of Skywalker is the worst movie in the entire franchise. Like
strong argument.
I feel like because I feel like it undoes so many things lore wise in the trilogy. It does damage retroactively to the series.
Yeah, it undoes it big time, as well as, and that's why more, like you said, more blame to JJ because so does episode 7. Like they you have this giant revolution where like, and they live happily ever after. Yeah. And then fast forward 30 years and now like the Empire's back under a different banner. Like they just, and the New Republic just doesn't count for shit. They don't help in this war. There's just the resistance now with a bunch of purple haired SJWs. Yeah. Like it just doesn't. It drives me nuts.
So I've thought about this so much. That's an amazing point. When I first saw Force Awakens in theaters, I had a really good theater experience. And my first time watching it was like, oh, that was pretty good, And then I thought back on it later on and I'm like, oh, wow, there's so many problems with this movie. And it really I could never get it out of my head. And you're exactly right. The problem that Force Awakens causes to the whole entire series is immense, in my opinion, because it undoes all of the victories that the heroes had in the original trilogy, right? Like every single one. Like Leia did not really successfully create a New Republic. Han has basically no character development to the point where he's now just the same as he was.
He's an old version of himself.
And Luke, his entire order is just gone. The Jedi, right? It's revealed in episode 7 that his order is just gone and he went into hiding. So they replayed Order 66 too. You know what I mean? So the Jedi Order is just gone. And now they just wiped the slate clean. And it's like, now when you watch the original trilogy, you always have that in the back of your head where it's like, oh yeah, all their victories meant nothing, practically speaking. And it's really.
No, and that's the other, like you said, like all of the victories of the original trilogy are gone, and then Han Solo went from being like this selfish badass, like he was, he was a bad motherfucker, but he was like really selfish and out for himself, and then he becomes part of the team and like a general in a righteous war, and then episode 7, and it's like he has a son who's really powerful, and then episode 7, 30 years later, in his twilight years, he's just back to being like a bitch of an old man smuggler. Like he wasn't a war hero. He wasn't any of these things.
It was like his entire character arc did not happen at all. It's just, And
that's why I really want to pitch the fever dream thing.
I don't think that they could have made a more whiny bitch of like a semi-main character. Cause I consider like Luke's cool, but like he's kind of a whiny bitch. But then they come out with, what's his fucking name? Adam Driver's character.
Kylo.
I'm drawing a blank. Kylo Ren. Yeah. And he's even worse. He's like a My Chemical Romance music video. he's like, I'm like, how do you, there again, like they undo, like Darth Vader was like one of the baddest motherfuckers of all time. And then they set Kylo Ren up to be the villain, but then he becomes a hero in a way worse story arc. And like, like there again, they had to bring back Sidious to even make it like a worthwhile villain. And then what was that in The Last Jedi? They killed off
Snoke.
Yeah, they just kill him off. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, with Kylo, my biggest regret is that I feel like there are so many more interesting ways you could have gone with his story arc than they did. So I feel like they chose the lowest common denominator and just went basic with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And also, like, when they brought back Palpatine, it's like, okay, in some sense, it was cool seeing Palpatine again on just some like visceral level, but lore-wise, I think that just destroys like so many things. Like, that's one of the biggest things that just went wrong for me. It's like you undid Anakin's arc. You know, there's no other way to say it. You undid Anakin's arc, and that's the main story of Star Wars.
And then we know that at the end of Episode 6 that Anakin is a Force ghost, and then while his son is going down this dark path, he just bails and doesn't do anything. And then Luke gives up, or you know, Luke Skywalker, who redeemed his, you know, ultimately evil father, is gonna strike down his 14-year-old nephew because he had a nightmare. Like, the whole thing is just such a mess. It's so offensive what they did with that story. And what was the other thing? Well, I mean, I think what they did is they, like, that whole thing is such trash that the only place they can really, you know, have a good story anymore is kind of what they're doing with the Mandalorian and Obi-Wan series and Rebels, where there's actually like, okay, this is before the terrible sequel.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, I probably would have been okay if you know, they could have kept the social justice nonsense in the newest trilogy. They could have just used Kylo Ren as just the most toxic masculine example possible. At least then he would have been a good villain, right? Yeah,
they just made him a little bitch though. And there was
they could have made him like a fucking pirate, raping and pillaging his way through everything, and it would have been better. It would have been a better villain.
He would have, and they could have set up his arc better, and they could have done this even to Episode 9, where do you guys remember the theory after Episode 7 where Kylo Ren like meets Han Solo on the bridge, and then he blasts him with his fucking lightsaber, and then he falls off, and then Chewie cries out. So there was that theory that, you know, he was doing this to like commit to the dark side the same way Anakin fucked up all those kids with his lightsaber. It was like, okay, Snoke is getting him to commit to the dark side and do something unforgivable, kill your own father, so you're like sealed to the dark side. But then, so it's like, okay, there was this theory that actually Han Solo was the one that ignited the lightsaber and took himself out so that he didn't have to have that fate. And then it's like, okay, that actually makes sense. You know, feel however you want about the story, but at least it makes sense. And then they never do that. There's no payoff. Like, there's so many loose ends and then unnecessary conclusions. And I mean, we could do like probably 10 hours on all of the faults of this. And actually that one YouTuber, I think his name is Mauler, he has a great takedown of like all of the sequel trilogy movies, if you guys haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's like 8 hours or something. I haven't watched it, but I've seen the length of his reviews.
Yeah,
people were so mad that they bullied that one girl off the second movie off social media.
Tran.
And that was overblown.
Yeah,
like that was. Ugh. And it's not her fault that she was a terrible character.
Daisy Ridley also got off social media.
Yeah.
So Star Wars fans, they're unforgiving.
Yeah.
They probably would have burned down Disney Studios if it wasn't for The Mandalorian.
Yeah, sometimes
that final season of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And Rogue One, I really liked. I rewatched Rogue One last weekend, and that still holds up. Like, that is really good. They tied it in beautifully, and that scene with Vader where he's in the hallway. It's beautiful.
I watched that in theaters. I was flying half mast. I was like, oh my god! Yeah, it just goes dark, and then the red lightsaber comes out.
Yeah, it was like a horror movie.
Yeah. I really like, especially on rewatch, I've really started to appreciate Rogue One even more than I did previously.
Yeah, and then I need to Rebels.
Rewatch it again because the ghost ship makes a cameo in Rogue One.
Yeah,
so I got to rewatch and pay attention for that. I'm always so hyped about the upcoming Darth Vader scene that like I lose focus. About
right, yeah.
Wait, the ghost is in Rogue One?
Yeah.
Oh, where are they at? Like, where's the? Like what
It's-
scene? I missed it.
The Scarif space battle, right after
Yep.
they come out of hyperspace,
Oh.
you can see the ghost in like a bottom corner of the frame. Yeah.
Shit. Okay. Yep. That's cool that they worked it in there because I
It's
forgot.
also
that they
in Rise
overlapped.
of Skywalker too, when all the ships fly in. It's
Yeah,
also
I
in
remember
there, too.
that.
Yeah.
I remember that. And yeah, I mean, I think because did Disney own Rebels from the beginning? That was always Disney.
Yeah, that was Disney. Yeah.
So they
was
did
that
okay.
one of their first ones that they did?
Yeah,
It
it was
must have
right
been.
after Clone Wars was canceled. Because some of the reasons it's more childish than Clone Wars is because they didn't have Disney Plus yet, and the only place they could place their animated shows was on Disney XD, I believe. So it suffered from like a lower age rating, and that's why it's kind of has a much lighter tone than Clone Wars or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm also pretty pumped about the upcoming Ahsoka series because I've read mixed reports, but it sounds like they're gonna try to tie in how she's going after Ezra. Maybe that's what I'm hearing.
Right.
Because they left that was a total loose end at the end of Rebels.
Yeah, which I think was a good idea. They could branch into a whole nother story. So I liked that. It was weird. Like he decides to just like go off when he could have gotten off that ship, but he had to like make sure Thrawn was taken into deep space. Like it didn't really make sense. I'm like, okay, I guess it's poetic. It's like it's going for the kind of emotional payoff that you want. But let's read a couple of our. We got a couple of comments with it being our first live stream. I think
The
that's
great roast.
pretty flattering. Yeah. So, Omoy Kane says Jay was right. XMR is king and BTC Bitcoin sucks. Also, Ace is king, so Jay was wrong and right. I have no idea what the fuck that means. So,
Slurp gang.
Yeah,
That's right. We got cross-platform wars going on.
That's
now.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like I just stepped into something I don't quite understand. And then James Gentleman, who's going to be an upcoming guest on the podcast, said, "Hey nerds, what's up, James?" Yeah, so hopefully we'll be doing more of this moving forward. A lot of the like live stream breakdowns where we're just kind of hanging out, taking a welcome departure from the kind of deep, like we'll talk about like Austrian business cycle theory, and then we'll go like we'll have some episode where we fuck off and do something completely lighthearted. But yeah, I feel like we kind of skipped over, or like I had a shitty segue away from the prequels, but going back to the prequels,
Yeah.
I think that like the other place where they could add a lot of context, and they do this with content or with the comic series, which I never read. I'll catch like some videos on YouTube, but between episode 1 and 2, I feel like there's a lot to unpack there with like Dooku and everything. So I think that's like, they could do either a live action series or another animated series in the future.
Yeah, that's a place that's just untouched basically between 1 and 2. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, because there's certainly like, because you miss everything, like, because Dooku, in my opinion, like I like Dooku, but he's probably the least developed out of all of the villains in the prequels. Maybe Grievous to a certain extent, but I feel like there's more potential for Dooku to get fleshed out more. And I know this is a great book, but
yeah, he's like a gentleman. Like he was known as being like this. He was kind of a snob. And he was they said he was a political, he was like, what did they say in Clone Wars, or not Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones, where Mace Windu's like, he's a political radical, but he's not a killer or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, they could make Dooku like, he was an anarchist, and he was just like, he was an ANCAP. And he couldn't take the Republic's like tax policy or something. I think they could have some fun stuff there.
Just goes fucking raging over the tax policy.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
he was basically a boogaloo boy.
They're gonna frame the separatists as neo-Confederates.
Oh god. Yeah.
Dude, the other thing that's so funny, especially like I feel like us being our age, we can look back and appreciate how funny this was, but the Trade Federation is basically China, like just nakedly, obviously, like they have tariffs.
Yeah, and it's something you miss when you're a kid, But look at
But even Lord Sidious, it is so good to see you. Like he just has like it's just a Chinese accent. It's not even like a kind of Chinese accent. It's like nope, he's Chinese.
Yeah.
So that is and dude, I remember like growing up. So I was 5 when episode 1 came out, and I actually remember like watching it in theaters, and and like the action figures. Like I remember like the smell of the action figures. And I think to this day they said that Star Wars Episode 1 from 99 had the most memorabilia, like merchandise, out of any movie in film history, which makes sense. I mean, I wish I could have been around for the hype, because I remember being a kid and it's like, oh, it was a big deal. My older brother was really into Star Wars, so I feel like he experienced that. But if you watch like videos or documentaries on it, it's like this was like one of the biggest events ever. I think it might still hold some records adjusted for inflation.
Dude, I remember that N64 pod racing game. Me and my buddies played the shit out of that. I might go buy an N64 in the next week and try to get that game, because that game was fucking awesome.
I've been meaning to get an N64 anyway. I feel like that's, if you want a good hedge against inflation, I feel like getting like N64s and like rumble packs for your controllers, that's probably a good bet, because they're not making any more of them. And like you said, there's a lot of nostalgia as like people our age get into their careers and start having more money, you're going to see them bid those prices up. That's just my prediction.
Didn't the kid that played Anakin in the first movie, didn't he like fall off the deep end after that and like claim Star Wars ruined his life?
Yeah, because he actually got bullied like by the fans like after it came out. There were, in fact, not just that, but I'm pretty sure, I'm almost positive there was a New York Times reporter who attacked him personally, to attack the kid in a review for Star Wars. And I think essentially he just got bullied at school and stuff like that, and then he eventually got arrested for drugs or something. I think it was.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's so typical of the New York Times.
Yeah.
Par for the course.
Do you remember what movie was that? I can't remember his name, but he was in that movie. I think it was Jake Lloyd. Yeah, he was in that movie Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah,
you remember that? Where he's like his dad, and it was an okay movie, but never anything again. He could probably live off those Episode 1 royalties the rest of his life, though. He's probably fine.
I did hear that Hayden Christensen is coming back for the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people hated on him too. They also, if you remember when they released the first DVD edition of the new trilogy, they edited in Hayden Christensen after like the prequels came out. At the end scene in Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
People were fucking mad about that too.
Yeah, they were.
Ace, that's what's cool. You said you have all the VHS tapes. What's cool is you get to, you can watch them all on Disney Plus right now. But I think it's like 5 or 6 times George Lucas went back in and then digitally remastered them. And that awful cantina scene in Return of the Jedi. Oh, I just mute it and I just wait. I just close my eyes and do breathing exercises for 3 minutes because it's brutal to get through.
Well, he changed it again after Lucas was gone. They edited the Disney Plus version into something a little bit different now. Yeah, so they changed it again recently. Yeah,
I was wondering because I had the VHS copies too, and I was like, I don't remember this scene. I was like, I know I was young, but fuck. I don't think my memory is that bad.
What's your least favorite change that was made, like from the edits, if you can remember?
Han shot first.
The cantina scene's pretty bad.
Yeah. I think, it's the cantina scene, but I also really, really despise what they did in Return of the Jedi when Vader says no when he kills the Emperor. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like he screams, no, and it's just kind of like clunky. Before, he didn't say anything. Before that change was made, there was nothing there, but you could still read like things, what he was thinking on his mask. And the whole like him verbalizing it kind of takes away from not from the ambiguity, but from just the emotion of the scene. It kind of takes you out of it a little bit. I hate that change so much.
Well, and that whole thing where everything, like the revisionist thing where I'm going to go back and make it perfect. Like I wish I would have done this. It's like, first of all, once it's out there, it's out there. You know, like people have VHSs and it just looks hacky. Like you don't trust, like you don't believe in your work if you go back and do that.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing with like, if you listen to old classic rock, like from the 60s and 70s, there are imperfections. And the reason there are imperfections is because they would do like live takes, and film was really expensive. Like recording, like tapes for actually recording music was expensive. So at a certain point they'd say it's good enough, fuck it, keep it. So you'd hear things like, you know, fingers sliding on guitar strings and all these little imperfections. And that it's actually pretty cool. It gives it some character. And nowadays it's like you have unlimited terabytes of data and they could like edit out the sounds and everything. So it's like, I feel like the same thing with older movies. The fact that they're a little bit cheesy, a little bit hacky, that there's these kind of like bad special effects.
Right.
Like you keep that. It's like a moment in time. Like you're saying, this is what we had to work with back then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's also like, it's also like, kind of insulting because it's like, yeah, you're taking away from the work these people did by retroactively going back and like fixing it, saying that it wasn't good enough back then too. You know what I mean?
Especially the Vader saying no thing. It's like I didn't catch that. I'm like, ugh. Like, yeah, I didn't catch that. I wouldn't have remembered, but it's kind of cringy even not knowing.
Yeah.
And that's why there's been a growing movement of people that are wanting to buy physical copies of stuff for that reason, because they're like, what if the political landscape changes and they want to edit in all sorts of messaging in films, and like the whole thing will be totally distorted down the road. And I think there's some validity to that. I mean, Star Wars was out for like 40 years, but they started editing in these new scenes and everything.
Yeah, for a pretty good amount of time, and then it started like right around I think like the prequels. He started going back and editing the original trilogy. Yeah.
Damn. Didn't they even do things like add color to lightsabers? Like they used to be like really pale, a little bit of blue, and then they're like, "Oh, we're gonna make them vibrant."
Hold up, Nick, you're buffering.
Shit. Yeah, I see that.
We're joined by C-3PO.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not liking this live stream.
Damn, dude, it was good for so long.
We should have went to Pornhub. It probably would have been a better streaming platform.
Is it back now? Is it okay?
It's still buffering a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully this. Close down some tab here.
Yeah, you close out of the Pornhub stream tab.
Give me 1 minute.
So, Ace, while Nick is buffering, have you caught up on the Bad Batch? Have you watched any of that?
Yes. Yep.
I'm enjoying it so far. I'm still anxiously awaiting a Jedi cameo.
Right. Yeah. I'm just because. Well, okay. Like after it was announced that Clone Wars was coming back, I was ecstatic. So anything that kind of carries on in the tradition of Clone Wars, I'm happy with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to like hit all the highs that Clone Wars hit. I'm just sort of happy it's it's there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. I like it, and because I'm curious to see where the storyline's going, because I didn't read up anything about the Bad Batch outside of seeing them in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's freestyling for me.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the only properties where you literally don't have any idea where it could go. You know what I mean? Because it's just so open-ended to this point, where it's just like, yeah, it's one of those where you can just speculate forever, and each theory is kind of valid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm also like, I like the Cad Bane appearance.
Yeah, I was so happy with that.
Yeah, Cad Bane. He was an underrated character.
Yeah, for sure.
Wars.
And it's been like, I think it's been like 10 years since he's actually appeared in a Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
So that's like great. Yeah, it's great to see him back.
Yeah. Although he sounds different. I don't know if they got someone else like voicing him now.
I think it's the same person, but I feel like the audio mixing or something was a little different. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I do see what you're saying. I feel like he used to have more of like a gruffness to his voice a little bit.
Yeah. Like he sounded almost like robotic in a gruff way.
Right. Yeah.
Who do you? Oh, Nick, you might be coming back. You're starting to look clear.
Oh shit.
Who do you have as like one of your favorite characters, but like is kind of under the radar, like underrated?
Oh, this is a really good question. Okay. Years ago, I would have said Ahsoka, but Ahsoka is no longer underrated, right? In the slightest. Honestly, probably the Clone Fives is one of my favorite characters in the entire, not just the show, but the series, because I feel like he has such a impactful story with like where he goes in the Clone Wars, and ultimately almost saves everyone. He almost saves the entire galaxy by him revealing Order 66 early. And I feel like it's one of those tragic stories that just is like, it's so impactful because he almost saved everyone. So probably 5s.
Dang, that's a good one. Yeah, 5 is definitely flying under the radar. Like most people aren't. He's a good one. I liked Satine.
Oh yeah, Satine was great.
Of Mandalore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that whole story with Obi-Wan.
I do too. And I think they did a good job of adding even more of like a human element. Cause I feel like in the prequel films, Obi-Wan is like pretty by the book. I mean, he's a little naive about what all is going on, but like they added a new layer to his character, I think, with that storyline.
100% agreed. Yeah. Like what the Clone Wars does so well is it just takes what you already knew, but it like grows it and reestablishes it and recontextualizes it in the greater like universe, which is like, that's the best thing you could want from like a sideshow, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Nick, you're still
you're still a little choppy.
I have opinions on this.
You got what do you got? Dial up?
There's a storm out right now, so I think that's why I'm losing connection.
Oh, you sound better.
But I hear you guys
sound
fine.
better.
Okay. Good. Then I'll roll with that for now. But on the topic of underrated characters, I really like Plo Koon. And like they really go into him. Like even as a kid, I thought he just looked the coolest. I'm like, he's got like a weird like. Now I hate masks, but back then I'm like, oh, he's got like a cool mask, but it's just his face. I think it's like a breather. Plo Koon, and then who else? Mace Windu, I would say, even is like an underrated character because they don't really get too much into his backstory or anything. But if you read like even the books, they talk about his fighting style and how he kind of like incorporates the dark side. I feel like the movies really left a lot to be explored there.
Yeah.
I caught most of that. You started to cut out a little bit at the end, but yeah. And it's Samuel L. Jackson. Like he's the fucking man. Like you couldn't cast it any better.
I love the behind the scenes when he's asking George Lucas to get a purple lightsaber, and George's like, "Oh, yeah, okay."
Yeah, you can't tell him no,
right?
Yeah,
there's a motherfucker involved in there somewhere.
Motherfucker. Man, Nick, you're cutting out again. Yeah. Mother Nature is not liking the live stream idea.
No.
If anything, I now support global warming. I'm gonna go dump some gasoline and oil in the grass outside.
Yeah, dude, I just the entire prequels are like really underrated, like story wise. Like I feel like the thing about the prequels, right? Is like I think a lot of people don't quite appreciate how well it fits into the OT, because that's usually one of the criticisms, right? Is that it feels so disconnected from the original trilogy. But when you look at it from like Anakin's arc, like there's a lot of things that really just make Darth Vader better as a character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's this great explanation about this by Dave Filoni. I don't know if you guys saw it, but he's talking about the Phantom Menace, right? And obviously the musical cue by John Williams, Duel of the Fates, when Darth Maul and the Phantom Menace fights Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. It's classic music piece. And it's titled Duel of the Fates because the whole point of that like duel is it's deciding the fate of Anakin's future, right? Like who will actually train Anakin. That's apparently what the song refers to. And when Qui-Gon dies, Qui-Gon was going to take on the role of Anakin's father, right? That's what Qui-Gon was to Anakin. And when Maul kills Qui-Gon, he's left without a father, right? And then he's left with Obi-Wan to train him because Obi-Wan promised to train Anakin. And all the way through this, right, it's this refusal, or it's this inability to like have a father figure as like a Jedi, as like a true master, that actually leads Anakin to be corrupted by Sidious. You know what I mean? So that it's kind of like from that moment in the prequels, it's like his path is set from there on.
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Obi-Wan, I'm going to try to talk here, even though I know it probably sounds shitty, but I feel like Obi-Wan was kind of like the brother role that would like force to be the father. He was never even a chance to take that on. So instead of being a guiding force, he was just kind of like Anakin's friend.
Right.
And that's why he failed being like the one father figure.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and it allows Sidious to take on that father role and corrupt Anakin. So, like, the Qui-Gon's death is probably one of the more important things in the entire Star Wars timeline, and I don't think people like appreciate it enough, right? Because like all the way through to the very end of the in Return of the Jedi, after Anakin has been Vader for years and years, it's like when Vader to me, this is the entire moral climax of the entire emotional climax of the entire Star Wars story is when Vader kills Palpatine, when he saves his son and kills Palpatine. The entire story rests on that one moment, in my opinion. Just everything comes together in that one moment. And what that is like Vader is becoming the father figure he never had in that moment, right? He has to choose to become the father that he never had in the form of Qui-Gon, and he kills Sidious. And it kind of like, it's like that George Lucas thing, right? It rhymes thematically. And like once you have that in context, it's like, oh wow, this all does connect back together.
Yeah, agreed. It definitely ties it all together, and it's like there's also like a sprinkling of like everything Anakin did he thought he was doing to help or to save Padme. So it's like the classic road to hell is paved with good intentions too.
Right.
You're right. When he loses Qui-Gon as his father figure, like it all of his issues from there on out are a result of that pivotal moment. And I agree. I think that if you talk to most fans of the prequels, they probably overlook that moment. They're like, yeah, Qui-Gon died, Darth Maul killed him.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or that he's just some like throwaway character, you know what I mean? Because that's like, I can see why people would think that, but it's like Qui-Gon is like one of the most important characters in the entire prequel trilogy, for the reason that of all the lost potential. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they brought Maul back. Like,
yeah.
He was a fan favorite.
God,
but
yeah.
At the same time, I remember seeing theories. People were like, "What if Rey is Darth Maul's child?" Which is just like a joke to begin with. But then, if you actually look, I actually made a meme in a Star Wars shitposting group where it shows Maul's body cut in half as he's falling down that shaft, and I drew like where his dick would be, like a little red dick. And I'm like, unless Dathomirian's dicks are on their chests, I think that Rey is probably in the clear without a paternity test, because it's like they never address that. Like, oh, he's got robotic legs, and it's like, yeah, but Obi-Wan chopped his dick off in essence, like he cut the whole thing. So
right.
I dug it. It's like, oh, his rage like kept him alive. Like, okay, maybe he was like, he sort of like cauterized his body. Like, could make the case because they never bleed when they get chopped with a lightsaber. So I think it's plausible, especially because the rules don't apply in Star Wars universe, and he's a different species. So I could roll with it, but I'm glad they kept him alive. I thought his death in Rebels was a little anticlimactic. Like it would have, or not anticlimactic, but it would have been cooler if they did that in a live action series. They should have saved that for the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah, I actually like Maul's death in Rebels. Like I like the lightsaber fight. It was very Kurosawa.
Yes,
it's very quick. I really appreciated that. Actually, I thought it was really well done.
I wish they would have had Ewan McGregor do it.
Sure, yeah.
But I get it. They had to like, fit it into the series,
right?
Speaking of the Obi-Wan series, my wife and I actually watched what's it called? Because I love Ewan McGregor, but we watched what's the movie? Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining, and he's great in that. Like the guy is just a phenomenal actor all around. But I really hope that the Obi-Wan series lives up to expectations, because I have high expectations for it with Filoni at the wheel. So I would say 2022 that's coming out.
2022 or something, yeah. I really hope they do like some type of Clone Wars flashback in that show.
Yes.
Yeah. So
they did say that they were teasing that him and Anakin meet again.
Right, and not just Darth Vader. They said Anakin, I think. So that's yeah.
I was thinking about this. Because in A New Hope, Vader says, "I feel a presence I haven't felt since," and then he's like, "Oh, you lived," but they don't talk about like, "Oh, since Mustafar or whatever." They just kind of leave it open ended. You wonder if they do have some run-in, like, Mustafar wasn't the last time they met, and then Vader thought he was dead because he said like, "Oh, he lives" or whatever. Like,
and Obi-Wan also says like he's more machine now than man. But how did Obi-Wan know exactly that Anakin did survive after Mustafar? You know what I mean? How do you know he? You know what I mean? There's a lot there that you could definitely like add on to.
Yeah, because nobody knew that Anakin was Vader. Nobody knew that they were the same guy. Like, cause, that's one thing. The Vader comics, I don't read them, but I follow Star Wars Theory has like a good like animation or illustration of it where he like goes over them. And the story of like Vader right after it happens are really good. Like that story.
Oh,
and I feel like, again, it could have been more live action, which they could still do. But there's a lot of good stuff there. Like or Anakin or Vader takes on like a clone battalion, they like attack him, and he just lays waste to them. And it really does Vader justice.
Yeah, there's like a 25-issue Darth Vader comic by Charles Soule that is just fantastic. I recommend everyone, if you haven't read it, you should read it, or if you can't read it, just watch them online. There's a lot of good like narrations out there that go through them, and they're really good.
I'll read that.
Yeah,
I read the Ahsoka novel.
Yeah,
and I thought that was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I plowed through that book in like 3 days.
Oh yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm just going to read 10, 15 pages before bed. And then the next thing I know, I'm up to like 1 a.m. on a work night. Like, oh, fuck.
Right.
Here I am.
See, this is what I love too about talking about this. And whoever's watching this stream who's a Blue Star Wars fan. But I feel like one of the things that's cooler about our generation is you can be more open about your fucking nerdy interests. and there's a lot more like, the market provides. Like people, there's a lot there. And yeah, especially when you're talking about like the comics and stuff. Like, why would people that are like, oh, watching Star Wars, that's fucking gay. And it's like, dude, there's so much like just interesting stuff that you can just kind of get lost in. And like we were talking about before, like those themes, like the hero's journey and whatnot, are pivotal. And by the way, we got a few more comments here. We see Seth says, my favorite part of Star Wars was when they voted Palpatine out of office and had a peaceful transition of power. James says, did y'all hear Mark and Remzo talking about the hero's journey versus the victim's journey on Lions of Liberty? It's the difference between good epic fiction and terrible epic fiction. Rey is a victim's journey. I saw somebody post about that. I did want to check that out because that's right up my alley. And then James said Ace is a droid, and then he meant Nick. And then Seth just says no. No, okay, because we have a few more minutes left. We're going to do a solid hour. But okay, do you guys believe in the Mandela effect of Luke, I am your father, or no, I am your father? Because to me, it was always Luke until a couple of years ago. But then again, that's just what people say in like pop culture references, and I don't really remember. I'd be lying if I said I did.
I don't know if I believe in the Mandela effect. I do think it's possible that it's just those memories get shifted around. Like it's like a game of telephone. You know what I mean? Like you hear other people say it, and that's kind of what you associate with other. It's like someone else says it wrong, and then you hear it then, and you're like, oh, that's how it's always been said. You know what I mean? So I don't know, but I'm more inclined towards it's just like a game of telephone.
I think it's fun to entertain. It's like the same thing with conspiracy theories. Michael said, I'm not basing my worldview on this, but it's fun to think about. It's fun to like keep the door completely open. But and then PO's being some people say that's the Mandela effect. But I mean, honestly, it's not going to.
Nick, you're buffering real bad now.
I heard 3PO's leg. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So 3PO, this is one that I've always found a little weird because I don't remember 3PO's leg in A New Hope being silver, but it is. Like one of his legs is silver.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shit, I don't remember that either.
Yeah. it was something where it's like, huh, okay, that's actually the weirdest one to me because I don't remember that being the case, but it is apparently. So yeah.
Shit, now I'm gonna have to rewatch it for like the 100th time.
Yeah.
just to pay attention.
Yeah,
to that.
it's his foot, right. I think it's like his right foot. I think is silver, or the bottom part of his leg. Yeah. So that is definitely weird.
Yeah, that is weird. I'm trying to think of some other Easter eggs like that I didn't notice. I mean, there's the obvious one, like at the end of the newest of the last film, The Last Jedi, where you hear like Ahsoka and
the Rise of Skywalker. Yeah,
the Rise of Skywalker. Sorry. They're all talking to Rey. That was
my, like, I don't like that movie, but that was my favorite part of the movie. You know what I mean?
It was like one of the few redeeming qualities about that film.
Right. Yeah. That was great.
Yeah.
That was great.
They could have saved it with a cameo by Ahsoka.
I was really expecting, like, when that moment happened, all the Force ghosts to like be behind her when she stood up. That would have been great. You know what I mean? All the voices actually like materialized. That would have been something pretty special. Also, going back to I'm sorry, I'm going to derail for a second. Something I just thought about actually is, like, how in the prequels, the whole Jedi, and this is kind of like the whole thing about, you shouldn't, just because the Jedi are supposed to be heroes, quote unquote, you shouldn't believe everything they say or trust everything they say in the prequels, as this is what it's supposed to be like. How the Jedi have this very like Buddhist mentality that, the only way to achieve peace is to get rid of all type of passion or emotion. So you can't feel love, hate, any of this. Right. And like in the prequels, it seems that their viewpoint has been redeemed by the end, because Anakin's attachment is what led him to become Darth Vader in some sense, right? His refusal, his attachment. Yeah. But, I always think this is pretty interesting, is that it's Anakin's attachment to Luke that actually saves everyone in the end, right? You know what I mean? Like his attachment, his love for his son is actually what ultimately stops Palpatine. So that's actually in some sense a refutation of the Jedi's own code. And I've always thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's true. And
the whole thing with Jedi, it's like they're almost like a priest class where they're abstinent and have relationships and everything. And then they kind of talk about how that was an error. Like, they shouldn't have put these like rigid restrictions and dogmas in the Jedi Order. Like, that was part of the reason they were blind, is they were so dogmatic. And then it's like in Rebels, like Kanan Jarrus has romance.
Yeah.
They kind of like disregard that rule moving forward. Realize that was one of the bad things or unnecessary things.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Because when Kanan, they did do that little flash forward, didn't they, where they had a baby?
Yeah,
they did. What is there any backstory there? Like, what happens?
No, that's wide open apparently. All I know lore-wise is that Hera appears in the Star Wars Squadrons game, apparently, like into like after Rebels, post Rebels. So in that game, she's a character. I don't know. They haven't touched her story any further though, or like what happens with her son.
Wonder if they're gonna tie that in at all in like the Ahsoka series.
I would imagine that probably would get touched a little bit. Yeah.
You would think, because especially if they're planning on it involving Ezra and
right.
And is it Bo-Katan?
Yeah. And Sabine, and and Thrawn.
Yeah, you'd think that they have to touch on. That. They just left that just wide open.
Of course, I'm sure. Yeah.
So
Thrawn's a bad motherfucker. I really like this
character. I love Thrawn so much.
He's like a bit of honor. He's not necessarily a dick. He's like a gentleman, like strategist.
Yeah. He's like the ultimate Machiavellian.
Yeah.
He's very into, like, he'll take like a plan to conquer, like something, try to study and understand victims, and it's really good. And I hope they do more with him. I know they wrote like a couple novels that are based around him. So, and there's so many characters from all of the animated series and comics and games that I want to see in live action. And then there's like the whole Old Republic. there's a whole lot there. I remember playing the game when I was a kid.
The Knights of the Old Republic RPG games are just some of the best Star Wars content that's ever been released. They're fantastic. If anyone listening has not played those, you need to. They're fantastic. Like just lore, even if you just go in for the lore alone, it's great.
I don't know if I played those.
Oh, dude, you need to.
Maybe.
Like lore-wise, KOTOR 1 and 2 are just fantastic, especially 2. 2 is one of my all-time favorite games.
I don't know if I did.
Oh man, yeah, you gotta.
I'm missing out. All right,
yeah,
I'm
they're
fired.
they're like 10. Both of them are like $10 on Steam, I think. So they're pretty cheap. Yeah.
Okay.
They came out in like 2004 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, what was I doing?
We're coming up on 9 minutes here. I think what would be cool is if we did like a breakdown of each movie. And these would be sporadically released, like no rigid schedule. But we look 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then sequels and then shows and everything. I think that would be like more of a narrow focus. That would be kind of fun to like go in depth.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I caught most of that. Do you want to like go like touch on those movies, or do you want to like rank them? It was a little hard to hear you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, Nick, you're talking like R2D2. I don't speak droid.
Okay. I'll remain quiet for the last few minutes.
Are we talking ranking the films?
Yes. Yeah. Just a break of each one. We can rank if we want, but just going into each one.
Oh, like, do you mean like rank 1 out of 10, like 1 out of 10, or do you mean like rank order, like in an ordered fashion? Like this one is first, second.
I was thinking like we could do it by release date, like 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Sorry, my internet. The storm is
better
still
now.
fucking.
It's better.
You sound good now.
Yeah,
it's sporadic, but yeah, this is it's a little frustrating. I'll be better prepared next time. Usually my internet is fantastic, so I didn't think this would be an issue. Nope, there. Yeah, no. Now I see. Now the little low bar is gone. So now I'm back.
Yeah, you're good
after missing 20 minutes. But yeah, no. So I think it would be fun to do like, we do like All About A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. Like go in and go through like each one and talk about like the politics of it, but then also just the general commentary. Because I feel like trying to have a 1 hour live stream talking about all of them, it's like we're just kind of like feeling where everybody's at with like how they view it. But I feel like there's so much depth to get into that it would be fun to actually go like into each one.
Do like a half hour on each one or something.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd be down with that.
Yeah.
I mean, The Empire Strikes Back is always going to be my favorite.
Yeah.
Personal opinion.
I go back and forth of the original trilogy. I go back and forth because it's like there's things I love from all of them, so it's really hard for me to decide. I think overall Empire is probably the best made of all three. I still think my favorite moment in all of Star Wars is probably the end of Return of the Jedi and Luke versus Vader, because I feel like everything culminates in that moment.
Yeah. See, I can't. I've thought about this too. If you told me to like rank the original trilogy, like best, second best, third best, because there's no worst in those three films, but I couldn't do it. Like I recently rewatched A New Hope and Empire, and I can't pick between the two. Like A New Hope is beautiful because it introduces you to everything, and then also it's a self-contained story. Like they didn't know that they were going to make a sequel when they made that movie, so there's like just all this unknown lore out there. But just by itself as a standalone film, it's fantastic. And I have a serious a quick story before we end here. Revenge of the Sith comes out when I'm in 5th grade, 2005. And it was released right around the time of my birthday. So like for my birthday party, like me and my friends went to see it in theaters. But before that, my brothers who were in high school at the time, they had one friend who would like burn DVDs and pirate movies offline. And somehow, I have no idea how he did it back then, but I got a DVD of Revenge of the Sith like a week before it was released in theaters. And I remember watching that. Oh, I remember watching it in my basement, like knowing that this was bad and wrong, but I was like indulging, like it was the dark side. But then again, we probably don't believe in intellectual property. So, I mean, fuck it, Right. And then they got my money anyway. I've given enough money to that franchise over time. But
True.
But yeah, no, that was a great time. But to me, Revenge of the Sith, I think might be my number one overall. There's just so much. The action is unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's tough to say. I mean, it's
Right.
hard to knock the OT because they're beautiful pieces of art, just like standalone on their
Right.
own. But and I mean, it's you have to pay homage to like what started it, and they're just fun,
Right.
entertaining movies. They hold up to this day, you know, without all of the retroactive,
Yeah.
you know, edits. But
Yeah, like for oh god, this is so hard because I think about this a lot and it always changes for me. But I do think out of the prequels, I think Revenge of the Sith is my favorite. Although I do have I do have a love, and it's I think Phantom Menace is still an underrated movie. That
Yes,
people do not give enough credit to.
yeah, they shit on it all the time, and I'm like,
Yeah.
the Phantom Menace is like it shows like what starts this whole thing, like a trade dispute. Which I remember watching some video where they were saying like, okay, so this is actually an act of aggression by the Republic. Like you have to go talk about like tax policy, and you send two warriors like armed to the teeth, like that they know they could just fuck up everybody. It's like, you know, sent as diplomats, but really they're like assassins.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah.
Diplomacy, they're not politicians. They skipped that and they sent the militants in.
Yeah, they're the
I feel like I understand the criticisms of Jar Jar, but I feel like if you just ignore Jar Jar in that movie, there's actually a lot of really interesting stuff in Phantom Menace that people kind of overlook. And I mean, the duel is just, you know, fantastic.
Yeah.
At the end. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's the best one next to Anakin, Obi-Wan. I feel like the OT really lacked in that department, but they just didn't have like the better stunts and effects and everything.
Well, I read something too about the guy that played Vader, or the stunt double. Like the costume was really cumbersome, and they couldn't. Like they couldn't choreograph like really badass fight scenes. And I think that's what makes like Rogue One so awesome, because it's like what Vader, like that's like he was this bad motherfucker and like was truly like terrifying, and I think they really did a good job of capturing that.
And I feel like the OT, in defense of like the OT duels, though, I do think like they encapsulate a lot of like emotion behind the duel. You know what I mean? Like the emotion is almost more important than the actual physics of the lightsaber duel itself, like the why they're doing it, why they're fighting in the first place, and they really nailed that in the OT a lot.
Yeah, especially like you mentioned it before, Luke versus Vader. Like when he's like hacking at him at the end, it's like you see this rage in his eyes, and it's like that is good acting. I mean,
that's right.
And people knock a lot of the acting in the Star Wars movies, and then going back to Revenge of the Sith, to this day, I think that like the best acting in Star Wars, and like honestly, just some of the best acting I've ever seen, is the scene where they're going to arrest Palpatine, and Anakin is like sitting on his hands, and he like stares over Coruscant, and he has like his like you see the tear coming down his eye, and it's like he realizes what he's about to get himself into, and it's like, and then Padme is looking, and it's like, oh, this is good shit. This is like this is just raw emotion, just capturing it. It's beautiful.
Right. And also, you know, that moment with like Luke and Vader, it's just a great scene. I think it's my favorite scene in the entire series, so I talk about it a lot. But it's like
at the end where he takes his mask off.
With that, and it's also the one just where after he's like just attacking Vader on the ground, and then he like turns around to Palpatine and he throws his lightsaber when he says, "No, there's nothing you can do. I won't fight you. I love my father, and there's nothing you can do to change it." Right. That's like that's Luke's crescendo. Right. That's the pinnacle of his character arc right there. And he throws his lightsaber and says he's not for sale. And then that whole scene is so great. And then, you know, apparently Palpatine survived being thrown down a shaft that exploded. I hate it so much. I hate it so much, man. It ruins so much of that for me.
I think if I was like gonna introduce someone to Star Wars that had never seen it, I just tell them don't even fucking watch the newest trilogy.
Yeah, no,
don't even fucking bother. It'll ruin everything. Everything was so well done for the most part, and then you just get that heaping pile of trash.
And I will say, because a lot of the criticisms we'll get in response to that, like they'll talk about Luke's arc in particular. They'll say, "Well, you just wanted Luke to be this, you know, perfect character." And it's like, look, for me, I'm fine with Luke having a character arc where he seems defeated. You know what I mean? I think that's a pretty interesting story. What I don't like is the fact that they completely nullified his character arc in the past, where it's like, okay, he has no students, his Jedi Order is completely gone, and it's just like, you know, that's that you robbed something in order for us to get this character arc. That's the problem. You know what I mean? It's like if he had still had his order, if he still had students, I would be like, okay, I'm fine with Luke having like some type of midlife crisis here. You know what I mean? I think that would have been fine.
Yeah, or just some sort of stumbling block where he loses his way or he becomes arrogant or something.
Instead of losing the entire point of his whole character arc in the OT.
Yeah, and, like Marvel did something similar with Thor, where it's like, he loses everything and then like redeems himself in Infinity War, and then it becomes a punchline in Endgame. That irked me the wrong way. I did not like that.
I agree.
But then it's like Luke. It's okay. So it's like he's a naive little kid. He's kind of a whiny little bitch, and then he becomes like battle hardened, and then he's like this wise badass in Return of the Jedi. Right. And it's like, and then what? Then he goes back to being a hermit and a whiny little bitch. Like years later. Just the whole thing, man.
And I will say he was a bad motherfucker in the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah.
That was so good.
That was great.
And I know there are some plot holes, I guess, but I mean, honestly, if you don't think about it too much, it's fine. Like it's like, just enjoy it. It's a great scene.
I will say that I was really happy after that, because it's like, okay, given we know how Luke's story ends ultimately, that the very least what they can do in some sense is kind of make Grogu Luke's student. You know what? I can take some type of solace in that. You know what I mean? I think. So absolutely. I feel like I can be okay with that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, we're a little over time here, so if we want to wrap, Ace, you want to tell people where to find you?
Sure. So I don't usually talk about Star Wars on Twitter, but I may start. You can follow me on Twitter at Ace_Archist, and I co-host the podcast Slurp Gang, which is nothing like this, and it's much worse. So. But no. All jokes aside, it's just me and my co-host Con Narcist and Jay, and we talk about just whatever we want to talk about. So yeah, you can find me there.
Love it.
All right.
Thanks so much for inviting me on, guys. This was great.
Yeah,
we'll have to something that's not anarchism.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to do this again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is a good primer. We didn't get roasted too hard in the live chat, so outside of Nick speaking droid.
Yeah, no kidding. And follow Tyler at Schlitz_beer, and then follow me /Mike at Paul's to the Walls with a Z at the end. And all right, guys, we'll do this again soon. Peace.